When I was younger, I used to think that being alone meant something was wrong with me. I thought solitude was a sign of weakness, like you didn't belong, like you'd been left behind. But over time, life taught me different. I learned that being alone doesn't mean you're lost. It doesn't mean you're broken. Sometimes it means you're on assignment. See, there are seasons in your life when the crowd disappears, when the phone stops ringing, when people you thought would walk with you forever suddenly take an exit. And you're left standing there, just you and your shadow. That's when most people panic. That's when they start doubting themselves. But I want you to hear me clearly. That moment, that silence, that solitude, that's your power. That's the gym your soul trains in. That's where grit is born. That's where your character lifts heavy. And the people who can't stand to be alone, they miss that. They miss the lesson in the loneliness. But not you. You learn to walk without applause. You learn to show up without being seen. You learn to believe when there's nothing to hold on to but your own word, your own dream, and your own vision. And that kind of strength, it's different. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't need validation. It just shows up over and over and over again until the world has no choice but to take notice. There's a discipline in solitude, a focus, no distractions, no performance, just the work, the craft, the calling, and yeah, it's quiet. But sometimes it's in that quiet where you hear the voice of God the clearest. When you're alone, you're not being pulled in 100 directions. You're centered, you're grounded, you're finally tuned in. I don't know who needs to hear this, but some of you keep trying to drag people into your journey who were never meant to go. You keep trying to fill your silence with noise, relationships, parties, likes, claps, thinking that means you're living. But the real growth, it doesn't happen in the crowd. It happens when it's just you, the grind, and the purpose God put inside you. You think solitude is suffering. No, solitude is strategy, and those who embrace it, who trust it, come out the other side not just stronger but unshakable. People throw around the phrase lone wolf like it's a curse, like it means you're damaged, detached, antisocial. They see the wolf walking alone through the snow, eyes forward, silent, and they say, that one must have been rejected. That one must have failed the pack. But they've got it all wrong, because the lone wolf, he's not broken. He's just built different. He's not wandering. He's watching. He's not lost. He's learning. People confuse isolation with exile. But sometimes the wolf walks alone not because he's been pushed out, but because he's been called up. Not every mission has room for a crowd. Some missions demand you move in silence, with precision, with purpose. See, the lone wolf ain't aimless. He's intentional. He's not out there howling at the moon for company. He's listening to the wind. He's tuned in, he's locked in, and while the pack is busy reacting to every noise, every distraction, every threat, the lone wolf is focused on the long game. He doesn't need to be seen to be dangerous. He doesn't need to be loud to be respected, because he knows something when the time comes, when the challenge is real. It won't be the crowd that carries you. It'll be the core inside you, and some of y'all need to understand this. Not everyone who walks alone is lonely. Some people choose that path. They choose solitude over noise, purpose over popularity, alignment over attention. They choose to step away, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Because when you're always surrounded by noise, you start to forget the sound of your own heartbeat. You start to move with the rhythm of others, and suddenly, you're living somebody else's life. But the lone wolf, he's not playing that game. He knows the pack is not always the place where truth lives. Sometimes the pack is where fear hides, where conformity thrives, where dreams go to die, buried under what's normal, what's safe, what's expected. So the wolf steps away, not to be defiant, but to stay devoted to his path, to his instinct, to his destiny. He knows the trail might be colder, the nights might be longer, but the vision stays pure, the voice stays his, the calling stays loud, and when he returns, if he returns, he doesn't come back looking for applause. He comes back transformed, so let them talk. Let them say you've changed. Let them say you're distant. Let them say you think you're better. Because a wolf doesn't waste time explaining the wilderness to sheep. He just keeps moving, keeps hunting, keeps becoming, because that's what lone wolves do. I remember the moment clear as day. I was standing on the edge of a decision that didn't make sense to anybody but me. Acting, that was the word echoing in my heart. But I didn't have a stage. I didn't have connections. I didn't have a famous last name. All I had was this quiet, burning conviction inside that said, "This is it. This is your lane. Now you have to understand where I came from. Dreams like that, they weren't part of the plan. People didn't become movie stars. They became workers, 9 to 5, get a job, stay safe, keep it simple, and I was expected to fall in line just like everybody else. So when I told people I wanted to act, really act, not just as a hobby, but as my life, they looked at me like I'd gone crazy. Friends, family, people I respected. They gave me that smile. You know the one. That tight-lipped pity smile that says, "You'll grow out of it." But I didn't grow out of it. I grew into it, alone, no applause, no spotlight, just rejection after rejection, waiting rooms filled with people who looked more Hollywood. Agents telling me, "You're good, but you're not what we're looking for." That stings, that silence after a no, it cuts deep, and it would have been easy to quit, easy to go back to settle. But I had this little voice in me that kept saying, "Keep walking," even when the path wasn't lit, even when my bank account didn't match the size of my dream, even when the doors didn't just stay closed. They slammed in my face. I had to learn how to clap for myself when nobody else did. I had to learn how to show up with the same energy, the same hunger, whether there was a crowd or just a casting director flipping through headshots. See, people see the success now, the awards, the films, the speeches. But they don't see the walk before the win. They don't see the nights I prayed for direction, the mornings I rehearsed lines in the mirror of a small apartment, the days I fought off doubt like it was breathing down my neck. That walk was lonely, but it was mine, and in that solitude I found a version of myself that didn't need permission, that didn't shrink, that didn't break, a version of me that said, "Even if no one believes in this, I do, and that's enough." So when people ask me now, "How'd you make it?" I tell them I kept walking, even when it was just me. Because that's when your character is built, not in the light, but in the shadow, not when everyone sees you, but when no one does and you show up anyway. That's what it means to walk alone. Not because you want to be separate, but because you're called to be different. There's a kind of clarity you can only find when everything goes quiet. When the noise fades, when the crowd disappears, when your phone stops lighting up, and the room gets still. That's when the real work begins. Not out there, but in here, in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. Most people are afraid of that silence. They run from it. They drown it out with music, with chatter, with distractions that keep them from hearing the truth. Because the truth, it doesn't always come gently. It's not always what you want to hear. But when you're finally alone, no filters, no performance, you start to hear something raw, something real. You start to hear you. You begin to ask the questions most people avoid. Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to impress? What would I chase if nobody was watching? Those questions don't show up when you're surrounded by noise. They show up in the quiet, in the stillness, when it's just you and your reflection. That's why isolation isn't a punishment, it's a purification. Because when the crowd fades, so do the opinions. When the applause dies, so does the pressure to perform. And what you're left with is truth. You find out what you really believe, not what you've been told. You see the cracks in your foundation, but you also see the strength in your roots. I've had to sit with myself in those quiet places too. No cameras, no scripts, no movement, just stillness. And in that stillness, I found clarity about what kind of man I want to be, what kind of legacy I want to leave, what kind of life I want to live when no one's watching. See, the world will try to define you. It will throw 1,000 versions of success at you. It will sell you images, titles, followers, likes, money, attention, telling you that's the goal, that's the finish line. But when you strip all that away and stand alone, none of that matters. What matters is purpose. What matters is peace. What matters is knowing you're in alignment with something greater than the moment. And you only find that alignment when you get still, when you shut out the noise, when you pull back from the spotlight and listen, not to the crowd, not to the critics, but to that quiet, steady voice inside that says, "This is your path, stay on it." You don't find that voice in chaos. You find it in the calm, in the discipline of being alone long enough to hear your own heartbeat. So don't be afraid of the quiet, because sometimes the silence isn't empty. It's just waiting for you to finally hear what's been speaking all along. So now that you've heard all this, everything about walking alone, everything about the grind, the solitude, the silence, you've got a decision to make, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Because at some point, you have to stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect partner, the perfect permission, and start walking. I don't care if the road is empty. I don't care if nobody understands your vision. I don't care if they say you've changed. You're supposed to change. Growth isn't supposed to be comfortable. Elevation doesn't ask for approval. You think you need an army behind you? No. All you need is the courage to take the next step. You think someone's coming to give you a roadmap. No, you are the map. You are the path. You are the move. But see, that's the catch. Most people don't want to walk alone because walking alone forces you to face yourself. It forces you to lead yourself. It forces you to stop making excuses and start making progress. And that kind of responsibility, it's heavy, it's real, it's personal. But if you're willing to carry it, if you're willing to embrace that lonely walk, you'll discover something that people in the crowd never find: freedom. Not just freedom from distractions, freedom from doubt, freedom from comparison, freedom from playing small just to make others feel comfortable. You'll stop asking for validation and start moving with conviction. You'll stop waiting for someone to say you're ready and start declaring it for yourself. You'll stop fitting in and start standing out, not because you wanted attention, but because you refuse to shrink. And listen, I know the road won't be easy. I know the nights will be long, but every step you take in faith, every choice you make in truth, it adds up. One step becomes 10, 10 steps become a trail becomes a road, and before long you look back and realize you didn't just walk alone, you walked boldly, you walked with purpose, you walked like a leader. Like someone who understood that greatness was never going to meet you halfway. You had to go out and claim it, so stop waiting, stop watching, stop whispering your dream like it's something fragile, speak it loud. Walk in it fully, own it like it's already yours, because maybe, just maybe, you're not meant to follow the path, you're meant to create one, and if that means walking alone, walk proud, walk tall. And whatever you do, don't look back, so let me leave you with this: you don't need a crowd to confirm your calling, you don't need company to validate your vision, and you sure don't need applause to walk in purpose. You just need faith. Faith in the direction, even if the path is unpaved. Faith in your steps, even if they're shaky. Faith in yourself, even when the world stays silent. Because every giant started as a lonely dreamer. Every mountain climb begins with one quiet step. And every legend once stood exactly where you are now. Unknown, unsure, but unwilling to settle. So walk like it's already written. Move like you've already overcome. Speak like the world's listening, even if they're not, because one day they will. And when they ask how you made it, how you got through, how you stood tall when the storm came, you'll smile and say, I walked, even when I had to walk alone. Now go. Walk boldly, walk fiercely, walk like the lone wolf, calm, focused, and unstoppable, because the path doesn't need more followers, it needs you. Mic dropped, walk off, spotlight fades,